Penn State COMMversations is a podcast produced by the Donald P. Bellisario College of Communications. Episode topics range from the people, programs, and events that shape the Bellisario College to discussing key aspects of life in the professional world for young and upcoming communications alumni. Please enjoy this episode of Penn State COMMversations.
Hi, I'm Bob Richards, the John and Ann Curley Professor of First Amendment Studies and Director of the Penn State Hollywood Program. I'm here with Deepak Sethi. He is a lecturer in the Bellisario College and also a colleague of mine in the Hollywood program. Deepak also has a day job. He is a writer here in Los Angeles, currently working on the show Apple and Onion, which airs on the Cartoon Network. Thanks for being here today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Today we're going to be talking about the impact of the coronavirus on Hollywood. Like with most other industries, COVID-19 has taken its toll on the entertainment business, with the production of film and television coming to an abrupt halt back in March. Now, we're going to talk about animation in a minute, but let's get started by talking about live action. When we talk about live action, we're talking about a term that means videography or cinematography of a live person rather than an animated character. Think of most dramatic shows or comedy shows that you watch on television. What is happening with those types of shows during this virus?
Well, it's really tough, obviously, just because in live action, you have a set, and the set has, upwards of 100 people, maybe more, and they all have to work in close proximity. So COVID-19 has sort of halted that in a way, fully halted it, because there's just no safe way right now especially at this time, for sets to go on. And because of that, a lot of the shooting that has happened here in the city has halted to a stop, and it's really difficult to maintain anything safety-wise. And I think that's just, the nature of the business at this point. So we'll see how it goes as we get more testing and more abilities to safely go back to work.
When we think about safely going back to work or returning to some semblance of normalcy in the production environment in light of the virus, that seems kind of a daunting task. I mean, for instance, how do you social distance if you're on a set? If you're an actor and you have to work and interact with each other, or if you're the crew and you have to be there with cameras or sound, I mean, it would be very difficult to do that on a set as we now know it. Have you thought about or have you heard about anything how that might work in the future?
Well, I think testing is going to be the most important thing. I'm not sure exactly how it'll work, because a lot of the shooting requires the participation of all the guilds, which in Hollywood, a lot of the unions, for example, the writers union, the directors union, the SAG-AFTRA, which is the actors union. Those are all important to get everyone on board. And unless everyone feels safe, it's not going to happen. So I think, as testing becomes more prevalent and more just available so that we can continuously test on set, I think nothing's really going to happen. But also at the same time, smaller sets with skeleton crews, I could see those things happening a little bit earlier than larger productions.
The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, is opening up some parts of the state right now. Certainly here in Los Angeles, we have still a large number of cases, and it's still a pretty big problem. But in other parts of the state, it has subsided a little bit. Could you see a point where production moves elsewhere? I mean, either in the state or outside of California to other areas where it's not quite as bad right now?
Yeah, totally. I can see it. I could see it. Well, production has always been elsewhere in a lot of ways in LA, because, you shoot a lot of things in Canada, for example, and in other states. But most likely, if there are places that are safer to shoot, I think that's the first thing people will try to do, is to go to those places and try to shoot there, because you have to find ways to continue content in safe ways where everyone feels safe, but also it is paramount to continue doing what you love to do. And I think, we're all here because of that reason. And so people really are excited to get back to work. It's just a matter of when we can do that safely.
It's possible that production is going to be disrupted far beyond just the return to a set. I mean, I could envision instances where an actor or writer or director has been attached to a particular project that was supposed to start, let's say, next month or the month after that, and they thought that the earlier project they were working on was going to be all finished by then, and now it's not, and now they have to try try to juggle those two things. Or, potentially you could have an actor who looks a little bit different if they were in the middle of filming something and maybe they gained the quarantine 15 and now they have to try to get them back into shape in order to be back to the same size or the same look that they had when they were doing this other project. Is that going to be a problem, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are questions that you don't have until this happens, and those are questions I don't think anyone has ever dealt with before. So contracts are going to be messy. A lot of lawyers are going to be working overtime and trying to sort everything out. But I believe they'll all be sorted out. I believe, I'm an optimist, and I believe that once this sort of is under control, so to speak, I think things will happen the way they did. And it does really sort of, as bad as everything is going on right now, you also realize, look, content is important. People are at home. They want obviously new content. And I think when this does move to the next phase where people can shoot, I think people are going to be very excited and happy. And I think there's going to be more content than ever being produced at that time.
Let's talk a little bit about animation, which is something you know quite a bit about. You've been directly involved with for many years. Now, you've been working remotely on your show. So you're one of the few areas where they actually continued to work. So your show, Apple and Onion, has been going on. When did you first get the word that you were going to have to go remotely? And how was that explained, or did it just evolve?
I think we were lucky in the sense that we were very proactive, and we started quarantining or being shelter in place, I guess, for a while. And it was really, really early for us. We were very lucky that our writer's room had a writer that was in England throughout our entire existence of the show, which means we were in a semi-virtual writer's room the entire time. So we were very comfortable being on something like this. I spend hours on this each day with other writers. And so when we moved to a fully virtual writer's room, it was pretty seamless for us, at least, because it was, what we were used to. And that was a gift. And I think a lot of animation is you're able to create animation as an entire production with each individual sort of artist or contributor to that process able to work from home. Because it's a different thing than live action, because there are no live sets and there's no locations and all that. So I think you really do get the benefit of being able to do a lot of what you need to do for animation from home. The only thing that is causing us some problems is recording. So when we record artists, that we record cast members, so voiceover actors, we have a hard time, safely bringing them in. On our show, sometimes actors come in 2 or 3 at a time in the booth and riff off each other, for example. And so that can't happen, obviously. So we're trying to figure out ways around it. But I think that's an industry-wide thing. I've spoken to my colleagues as well on other animation shows, and they have all said the same thing. We're sort of that's the bottleneck right now. But I think there's a way we're going to be able to get through it. And so that's really the last piece.
Why don't you explain for the audience what a writer's room is like when you're actually at the studio, and then how it changed when you're actually doing it as a remote broadcast?
Sure. Well, you know what? The good answer to that is that it hasn't changed a lot. And so really the writer's room being fully virtual has not changed very much. In fact, we're finding a lot of benefits that we never even realized that we could have before, because before we would share things online, reference points, for example, if we were talking about a joke that we might want to do, or a plot point, or something that one of our characters may want, we would show it to the writer who was not in LA. But now we're able to all of us can sort of send each other through the writer's room things so it's a lot easier to pitch something when I could go, hey, and it looks like this. And hey, and it looks like, what if it sort of resembled that? And I can just sort of flip it over to the writer's room, and that's helpful. So I think those are the things that you find that are benefits of that. Taking little breaks. We take little breaks now that we never really did. Or maybe we did, but we just never really called them little breaks. But I think that's kind of cool, because you're at home. So, you could go grab lunch and then come back and start again. Or, we may leave this on and just continue to do the things that we do and come back. And sometimes we're receiving a package at the front door and still listening to some of the writers pitch some jokes, come back. And so you're always constantly involved. We use messaging a lot more now than we ever did. We message each other, we pitch on things through a group chat. If we leave a meeting a little early, there may be like, hey, we need a joke on this part of the script. And then people will message the group and say, and then we get a bunch of pitches that way. We never did that before. Or we did, but very, very lightly, but now we do a lot more. And so those are the little ways that, and in a lot of ways, you start off from a point of going, oh, wow, this is going to be really tough. But then you start realizing like, oh, these are things that we should be doing when we're in a real room. This is not a bad thing. In fact, it's helping us write better scripts. And that's always a really good thing.
How much time a day do you have to spend online?
So our show is a little different. Like we'll meet briefly sometimes we'll meet for hours at a time, depending on what we're doing. And then the writers sort of break off and write scripts and write outlines and write premises on their own. So we're lucky that way. And as writers, it's a lot easier to sort of, meet. And then sometimes, for example, I'll be off on a script and I'll be stuck on something. So I'll ask the writers, hey, would you like to meet on Zoom for a little bit? I'm stuck here. And then they'll pitch on it. They'll help me out. And then I'll go. So it's a lot of impromptu stuff. So we're basically just waiting on call a lot of times, but then we have our scheduled meetings that go on, sometimes long, sometimes not, but it's dynamic in that way. But yeah, no, it's great. It's great to always open up your laptop and have writers there to help you.
How long did it take you and your fellow writers to get used to this, to get into the groove of meeting online? Because obviously it's kind of happened sort of abruptly, and then you were thrust into this. And did it take a while, or did it just kind of naturally happen?
Well, because we were sort of semi-virtual the entire time, it felt so comfortable that I don't even remember when we did it, because it was like, instead of having one screen, we have 4 or 5, like that are here. So it felt very, very easy for us. It was very, we transitioned very seamlessly to working virtually. I even feel weird saying virtually because it doesn't feel like it's virtual. It feels, we haven't physically seen each other for months now, but it does feel like we've always sort of been together, if that makes sense.
And for the writer in London, it was no big deal.
Yeah. Well, actually, he lives outside of London, so he lives on a farm, and it's so nice for him to you'll see his background. And we have another writer who has he's up in the valley north of LA, and it's nice. It's actually nice to see the person you're working with at their home environment. I have a cat that sort of walks in and out, and that's sort of part of the daily experience. And other people have kids and they're doing like things in the background, and it's just fun because, sometimes, and this actually happened, we saw sort of someone's kid run into the scene, I guess, of the writer's room. And we thought it was funny, and it sort of turned into the script, like we were using things that were happening in the Zoom sort of meeting and using that in the writer's room. So a lot of really positive sort of developments here.
Well, ordinarily you have a table read at some point in the week, and you bring the actors in and they read the script aloud, and you get to hear it and hear your jokes and hear your writing, and the artists get to hear how the characters are being portrayed and so forth. Are you able to replicate that as well?
Well, we have a different sort of situation where we have George basically our creator and showrunner also is the voice of Apple. So he does Apple and Onion together. And so we do what's called a read-through. And so that read-through allows us to hear how the jokes are playing. And then we do what's called a handout, which is we hand out the script to all of the team members on our show. And those things have continued to happen through WebEx and through Microsoft Teams and things like that. So those have been going pretty smoothly. And again, we found some benefits of being online and being able to share reference points. And, when you're doing animation, one of the major things is that you're trying to express an idea that may be very big and very unique and very bizarre in some ways. And so for you to have a reference point at the ready, because, when you're live and you're in person, a lot of the artists will just draw on a Post-it and say, here's what I'm thinking. And so here you could do the same thing, or you could just say, like Google Images, here's kind of what I was looking for the slide that they're going to go on. Here's how this looks. And that's just really, really helpful. And you don't have that ability when you're in an actual room. It just takes a lot longer. So that's been going really well. And I think in terms of the handout and in terms of read-throughs, we're doing it online and we're doing it through here. And it's not, the timing is a little different, but it's not that crazy. And we're getting it smoother each week.
We've been talking about Apple and Onion. Maybe it'd be useful to just tell the folks who Apple and Onion are and what the show's about a little bit.
Yeah, I like looking at Twitter and looking at how our viewers describe the show, because it's a lot better than how I would describe it. But it's kind of
Remember, we're rated G here. We have to keep everything.
Yeah, it's kind of like Flight of the Conchords for kids. It's kind of like it's just two newcomers to America, and they're British, and they are Apple and Onion, and they live in a world of food, and they are just trying to sort of get by and live their life in this new world. And that's really the premise of the show. They have sort of an optimism, and as you said once you watched it, nothing ever goes right for them. Which I think is a great way to describe it. So I'll use your words to describe it.
Now, and all of the characters are food products of some sort, and you now are a food product on the show. Tell us a little bit about your character.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this, because it took me years to get myself inserted into this show. And no, honestly, I'm Canadian, and there's a food in Canada called Poutine, and that's French Canadian. It's fries and gravy and cheese curds, and it's amazing. It's
very healthy.
It is the greatest food ever. And so there's a character named Poutine, and I voice him, and he's also Indian, weirdly. So there's this Indian Canadian Poutine character, and he debuts in an episode called Drone Shoes, which he owns a local volcano, a tourist sort of thing, and so Apple and Onion go to the local volcano, because everyone has that local volcano. So that's Poutine. So yeah, everyone's a food item. We have a falafel character that is their landlord. We have a Jamaican Patty who is their boss, and so we have all these characters that are food, and it's just a fun, crazy show. Now,
do you get to write your dialogue for your character?
I try, and then George will, our showrunner will it's his show, but I'll try to push some jokes, and then I'll try, but I'm delivering the line, so I deliver it. Like how you're hearing me now is literally how the character sounds.
That's how the character sounds?
Yeah. Very, very like monotone, and just, all the viewers at home are going, yep, we get it.
So, writing is both a solitary and a collaborative effort in a way. I mean, you write, I know you, and you write a lot of times late at night, around weekends. You're often writing at odd hours. So in that sense, you've been kind of working remotely for your whole career, because there's at least part of it that you're doing it on your own. And then, of course, when the script is put into play, you have other people who are collaborating with you on it. Has working at home through this virus, has this been just sort of an extension of that, or does it somehow seem different to you?
No, I think it's I've heard other writers describe it as it is something where writers are at home with. We're usually at home anyways, and this virus and this pandemic means that we're at home more, and it really does give you some sort of thought as a writer creatively, that there's something you need to say about not just the current situation, but this is something that's happened once in 100 years, and so it is important as an artist, as a writer, as any artist really, to have your voice heard. And I think we're all affected by this to different way, and every artist is going to have a different interpretation of it. And so for me, it was really helpful to be at home and also, you know, have the time to write. I mean, you have lots of time to think and write, and, you know, there's only so much you can watch on TV. At some point, you're going to be able to use this to your benefit. And that's what's so great about, you know, I commute a lot. I commute to the show, to their studio, and I come back, and that's about 2 hours of my time that now I have. And so those things and building a routine as a writer is really important. I do write at odd hours, but at the same time, you know, routine is really, really important for me.
Now, have you learned anything about yourself during this? So you mentioned you have a cat, Howard, and
Right.
I'm going to say that Howard is a female cat, but Howard is named for Howard Stern. So now is Howard kind of annoyed with having you around day and night and expressed that to you in some way?
Yeah, I started to realize that, you know, my cat would now, like, ever since the pandemic, when I got into a room, my cat would go to the other room. And when I got to that room, my cat would go. And
I did that a lot with you over here. I mean, I kind of understand that.
Yeah, that happened about halfway through the pandemic. I started realizing my cat was giving me subtle hints like, okay, are you not leaving again? What's happening? Like, you know, so I think she's having her own sort of personal crisis, but I'm here to stay.
Now, for those folks who might be watching this vodcast, they're probably also avid readers of The Communicator. And if they read the fall 2019 issue of The Communicator, they would have seen a story about you and your film directorial debut for the short comedic film Coffee Shop Names, which has been a big hit in the festival circuit this spring. Even a lot of the festivals have had to cancel their screenings and so forth. The festivals have gone on. It was just about a year ago that you were in the pre-production phase of this film. What a difference a year makes. If this were the year if this were right now, if this was happening a year ago, how different would have been? Would you have been able to do the film?
Oh, I would. I'm so grateful, you know, that it happened the year it did. I'm just so fortunate. Sometimes you just look at your timing and go, wow, this is a year. Now, I really, my heart goes out to anyone who is in the middle of a project or doing something that, you know, they spend, if you remember, like, a lot of times films take forever to get together, to get to a place where they can make it. You know, sometimes they spend 10 years trying to get the financing, and, you know, you have an actor, like you were saying earlier, you know, you have an actor for a window, and then this hits and everything stops. And it's really, really, my heart goes out to them, because I know for me, it was tough even without anything else, you know, and it's tough. It was just a short film, but, you know, it was a time commitment, and it was a lot of things have to sort of fall into place for that film to work. And for this, to the complications that you have here, it's really, really tough. And, I don't know what I would do. I think it would be really hard. You can't shoot. You can't have your set. You can only do pre-production and, you know, plan out your script and storyboard to do everything you possibly can to hit the ground running when you get able to. But no, I'm very fortunate that it happened. We got it all done last year. And that alone was such an incredible ride. But at the same time, it's like, well, how are people going to shoot things now? I mean, people are going to still create things. I just wonder how they're going to do it. If it's indoor, if it's found footage, for example, documentaries, things that they can do without having to shoot with a set. I think it's going to happen. More of that will happen.
If a film had been in post-production during this, I suppose there are opportunities for it to continue. But yes. Anything that was either in production or just about to go in production, that would have been the death knell at that point, anyway.
Yeah, it's very tough. It's very tough because, you know, like you were saying, just even like in terms of actors. Well, see, the actors are so versatile, and they are able to sort of recreate the looks that they need. Like, a lot of them are very good, but locations, you know, you might lose a location, like literally lose it, like in the sense that business may not return. And so how do you shoot there if you have half of your shots already? So I don't know how those things happen, and I don't know how people will be able to pick up where they left off. So I guess we'll see.
There's certainly a lot of speculation that there will be another spike in the virus at some point, either in the fall or the winter. Do you think that might weigh in on some folks' minds in terms of actually ramping up production for fear of, boy, we're going to go through this whole thing again. We're going to get started and then boom, we're going to have to stop. Do you think they're going to kind of wait it out, or how might that?
I don't know. I think each studio is going to have to make their call. Each producer, each director, they're going to have to make their call because it all depends. I mean, I feel like, yeah, you have to rush to get content, but maybe you're rushing to get animation at this point just to sort of, wait until it is safe and then do live action. But I think that it's going to be tough because even animation is a long runway that you have to go through to get to the end of the final product where you can actually have someone watch it. It takes about a year in animation to get from script to something you can put on television or put on a streamer. So it's an interesting predicament because I wonder how content will change, because is it going to be films that are contained horror films, like one location? Is it going to be those types of things? Are we going to see more of that? I think that the answer is probably going to be, yeah, we're going to see more of those things. Less day players, for example. Day player is a guest star on a show that may just be on for one episode. I think it's going to be hard to have a lot of background actors. It's going to be hard to have a lot of guest stars. You're going to have smaller crews. You're going to have smaller cast members. You're going to have less locations. I think all those things are going to be true, but that just pushes you to try to write more and better,
Yeah. You might want to write a script for something to be shot in Antarctica. I think that might.
Yeah.
It's funny because when you were mentioning that, it dawned on me that, if you were shooting on location in March, let's say on the East Coast, you might have been looking for a winter scene or a snowy scene or so forth. You're going to have to, and if you're in the middle of that, you're going to have to wait a while.
Yeah, I know.
For continuity purposes, to get back into that groove is going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, but then you got to rewrite it as a summer scene or something. It's like that's the really tough part, because it'll make writers have to write around certain things. Like writers are always having to write around things, and directors and everyone to try to fit it into it. Like, yeah, so you're gonna have to switch up things based on your current needs.
Well, that's about all we have time for today. Thanks, Deepak, for joining us, and thanks to all of you for watching. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Penn State Conversations. For more information about the Donald P. Bellisario College of Communications, including the latest news and upcoming events, visit bellisario.psu.edu or find us on social media at PSU Bellisario on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.